Hi, my name is Robin Devonish, and this is my testimony.
This is my testimony. This is my testimony of what was done for me. This is my testimony. I've got a story to tell to the nation.
Oh my goodness. So, it's so interesting because when you hear about testimony, sometimes, you may think it's like the worst thing in the world when someone shares their testimony, right? Because, there's a culture surrounded around when someone shares their testimony that it always has to be sad or it always, has to be a thing where, it tore you to pieces. And while, we go through things on a daily basis, we have so many things to testify about. I am happy to be here to just share a different perspective. And I'm going to say that great things sometimes come in little packages. And the reason why I say that is because in 2009, of course, many people would say that this was not great, but to me, it was great because I needed that to happen, I guess, at that time in my life. And so, yeah, you can say, or we can say that, there's no sickness in God and, God is a healing God. However, I believe that we all have to go through those situations for us to know that he is a healer, right? And that he is a deliverer. So let me just tell you what happened. In 2009, in August of 2009, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Breast cancer, it had already, started to spread a little bit. I was really, really close to stage 3, to the point where it had started to spread to my lymph nodes. And I remember, when I was going through the whole process of, learning that this was happening to me, right? So one day, I'm in the shower and I'm checking myself. So, of course, ladies, you know that we should be always checking to see if we find any lumps in our breasts and all of that. It's said all the time, but the question is, how many women do it, right? But let me just say to you, if you're watching this video, if you're watching part of my testimony, make sure that you are taking care of yourself and checking yourself, right? I thought that what I was feeling was something from a menstrual cycle. However, as time went on and months went on, the lump became bigger. And so, of course, I went through all the tests and the mammogram and the biopsy and all of that. And I remember the day that I was going to receive my diagnosis. Oprah normally came on at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but this particular show, I don't know if it was a rerun or I caught it on a different station. She was uh, interviewing Montel Williams. And some of you might remember Montel Williams. He was a talk show host. He was in the Marines and all of that. And he was talking about how he had multiple sclerosis and how he kept pressing forward and doing what he has to do. And it was so interesting because he calls it a gift. And I said, wow, that's interesting. A person that is going through so much pain and turmoil. I don't know what it's like to have multiple sclerosis, but, I've heard plenty of people talk about it and say that, it can be a very debilitating and painful disease. However, he looked at it as a gift. He looked at it as something that came in a package to him for a reason to, stand up for whatever he needed to stand up for, or God is taking him through to show him or to show other people. But I found that to be really fascinating when he said it. And so I went to the doctor that day. Specifically, it was August 5th, 2009. And waiting for my diagnosis. And was also during that time, I had just got married, not even a year before that. And so that was a lot, for a new marriage between me and, my now ex-husband. However, when I was in the room waiting for the doctor to tell me that I, had breast cancer. Of course, that's an impatient time. That's a moment of anxiety. And so when he said it, Of course, I broke down in tears. I mean, who wants to hear that they have cancer or any type of cancer, right? So, I broke down into tears and was very emotional about it. I didn't scream, but I was very emotional about it, and crying, and so the doctor, he's just talking and talking and talking, and then he says to me, well, you need to do this, that, and if you don't do this, that, then it's going to come back, and of course eventually you're going to die. Now, when he said that, of course, that definitely made me stop in my tracks in terms of crying. But it also put a fight in me. It put a fight in me. And I think that that is where, for me, when I say great, sometimes great gifts comes in the smallest packages, because that I created my own package around that situation, right? And so, I decided in that moment that, I was not going to let him win. And also, listen, I believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. So, you can't tell me what's going to happen to me. Only God can dictate what would happen to me, whether I live, whether I die. That's the way that I looked at it. So it also put a fight in me to say, well, no, I'm going to prove him wrong. So now I did go through treatment, and I did, go through everything that was necessary to, sustain my life. But here's where the great gifts came. While I was going through all of that, it gave me a different lens, and it made me look at life differently. And I didn't realize certain things. When you're going through life, you always wonder, do certain people really love me, or do certain people really care about me, or furthermore, does anybody care about me, right? Because when we go through life, sometimes we feel alone, we don't feel supported. And it's not to say that I had any of that, but one of the things that I will always remember was when I told my friends that, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so after the diagnosis, uh, everyone came to my house that Saturday, and I told them that I had an idea and something that I wanted to do. So really, I'm thinking about, like, at that time, like, why was I even thinking about helping others or doing anything for someone else? But that's just me, right? That's just who I am. That's who Robin is. But anyway, so we're at the house, and my friends are coming in one by one, and there was two of my friends in particular that I had to actually take them to the bathroom to console them. Right? I'm the one that's diagnosed with breast cancer. I'm the one that's being told that I have to go through all of this treatment. But they were the ones that were so upset. And the revelation I received from that situation was, wow, I didn't realize how many people loved me. It's so interesting. I did not realize that. Of course, yes, you have friends and you have family, but when I say so many people banded around me, I look at that as a gift. Like, that had to happen for me to see that. My diagnosis had to happen for me to see how many people love me. Not only that day in the house, but then after that, I decided that I wanted to have some type of event to bring awareness to breast cancer, because once I, discovered the statistics, and once people started calling me, telling me that it had been years since they had a mammogram, and all of that. I even found out one of my sisters, she had said, I haven't had a mammogram in 10 years. How is that even possible? Because we grew up in a space with our mother that, you took care of yourself. So what do you mean you haven't had a mammogram in 10 years? So when that happened, and I had this event, and when I say so many people showed up and support, they paid for the tickets. And so we were able to take, a portion of the proceeds and give it to a young foundation that was helping women that were under 35, that were diagnosed with breast cancer. Right. So that was one gift that I received from that situation. Another gift that I received as well is the gift of peace. I decided that I didn't want certain people around me. If you were going to be negative, if you were, going to, speak to me in a way like as if you thought that, I was going to pass away, I wanted people to treat me regularly. And so, with that being said, I made sure that I embrace peace on another level, even to the point where I made the decision to cut certain people off, because I wanted to make sure that I maintain peace on another level. And when you do that, that helps with your healing process. That helps you to sustain. That helps you to move forward and to be strong in your situation, right? And so that was another gift for me. Another, the third gift for me, and of course I received many, but the other gift that I received is the fact that, you know, a lot of times we hold on to stuff. We hold on to stuff, we hold on to people, and we have to learn how to release people. And also, we have to learn how to make sure that we're not only accountable to other people, that we're accountable to ourselves. And the reason why I say that is that we have to learn how to let people go, is because one day I was coming from chemotherapy, and you know, those that have taken chemotherapy, you know that, you know, it takes away your taste buds. And so there are certain things that you just, you know, some things you could taste, some things you can't taste, right? And so the interesting thing is, one of the things that I could taste was strawberry cheesecake, right? And so I finished chemotherapy, and I drove to Junior's Cheesecake in Brooklyn to get me a slice, right? And so as I am coming back outside, I run into this woman, and I didn't know who she was at first. I ran into this woman, and a family member of hers, but I did remember the family member. So I started talking to the family member, but this particular woman, she's yelling and screaming, and she's talking about she's gonna beat me up, and she's cursing me out, and she's calling me all types of bees and all of this stuff. And I'm looking at her like she's crazy. But this other family member, I'll just leave her as I, you know, said to this person, listen, you know, leave her alone. Why are you, you know, she's trying to hold her back from attacking me. And so when she said her name, I remembered immediately who she was. And the reason why she, you know, remembered me, or the reason why she was holding this grudge, was because probably about maybe 7 or 8 years prior, I used to work for a city agency for foster care. And she was abusing the children that I, you know, were in care of, that I was responsible for, and I had them removed. And not only did I have them removed, I made it so she could never get foster children again. And so she remembered me, but almost 10 years had passed, possibly, that she's running back into me. She never took accountability for what she did. If she didn't do anything, she would have been able to keep the kids. However, that moment taught me, because I didn't flinch. I didn't, you know, argue with her. I didn't, because remember, here I am on a peaceful journey. So I can't, you know, get into what she's into. But it was just interesting how she remembered all that time. And so the gift in that reminded me the importance of how we have to learn to forgive. We have to learn how to let things go and let people go. And also, we have to learn how to be accountable. She was never accountable to herself for what she knew that she did. And so as I, you know, as just as I'm continuing to think and talk about, you know, this situation, and again, you know, some may say, looking at this, well, how is this a testimony? Because those gifts, those gifts were a blessing to me. The gift of peace, the gift of learning to let go, the gift of love, the fact that people would love me so much, those were the gifts. And so even though cancer is great, it, you know, it can be a monster. And when I say great, I'm not saying that in a space to, you know, give it some kudos, but it is a great disease. It hurts a lot of people. It hurts a lot of families. It takes a lot of people. But that great gift to me came in a small package with all of those different lessons that I learned. And it also forced me to write a book called The Gift of Cancer. And so that's my testimony. You know, I'm just a different person, you know, since that has happened. Now, how many years are we out from it? It's been what, about 16 years at this point. I'm fine. I don't say I'm in remission. I say that I am healed, because I am healed. I don't believe that, you know, it's going to come back. I don't believe that. I believe that I am totally, totally healed, and that God has done a work in me. And so, what better gift They're for God to do a work in you, not only healing you physically, but healing you spiritually, healing you psychologically, healing you, in terms of the people around you. Healing, 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 healing. So my testimony, if I had to say anything, I would say most of all that my testimony is about healing. And it's about gifts and paying attention to the gifts that come to you when you are going through one of the toughest times in your life. So thank you for listening to my testimony. And I am Robin Devonish, and this is my testimony.
This is my testimony. This is my testimony of what was done for me. This is my testimony. I've got a story to tell to the nation.